Good evening, everyone. Welcome to ICF Connecticut's International Coaching Week. And we are going to start in just a few minutes. I would like everyone to notice the chat box down at the bottom there. You can put in the chat box what town you're from, what city you're from. And if you're not in Connecticut, tell us where you are in this great state. See as well, we've got many people filing in. We've had a really great week so far. I see some of our regulars are here again tonight. Hi, Judy and Naomi and Megan and Richard. Anybody writing in the chat box? Oh, Richard's from Atlanta, Georgia. Suze, what town do you live in?
Bethel, Connecticut.
Where?
Bethel.
Bethel. Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Linda, you are all the way out in California. What city in California?
Carlsbad.
Carlsbad. Okay.
It's in San Diego.
Oh, okay. Cool. Cool. I just realized I left one paper across the desk. Right back.
Oh, hi, Eve. I see from Long Island there.
Great. Great. So we're going to get started in just another minute and get ready for a really interesting evening. And I hope you have a pen and paper ready because you're probably going to want to take some notes. But you will be getting the recording. Our virtual assistant will be sending everything out tomorrow. So you'll be able to run through it again with your notes and embellish them even more.
It's so nice. We've got a bunch of folks from outside Connecticut.
Yeah.
And Connecticuters or nutmeggers, I guess we would call ourselves, right?
That's right. I'll be here in Boston, Long Island. Yeah, and if you're not in ICF Connecticut, we'd love to know how you heard about this week's events too. If you're on a mailing list or if you heard from a friend or something like that, you can throw that in the chat box too. And by the way, in the chat box, you can put to panelists or to panelists and attendees. And we love it if you include the attendees because then everybody gets to see what everybody is saying. So, Windsor, Connecticut. Hi, Cindy, you're back again. Love to see you all. Okay. All right, 6:03, why don't we get started? So I am Monica Leggett. I am the president of ICF Connecticut, and I'm really thrilled to be here tonight to welcome you to yet another webinar. We've had so many wonderful ones this week, and one more day to go. So we are part of the Global International Coaching Week celebration, where coaches all around the world are offering all sorts of great, wonderful programs that bring together individual professional coaches representing a wide variety of coaching specializations. And we're really thankful that our members are really stepping up and then recruiting a few volunteers as well. Linda's all the way out in California. So we're going to celebrate the power of professional coaching to positively impact individuals, organizations, communities, and the world. So we've had a very full schedule, but we do have one more day tomorrow. We have an 8 a.m. workshop and then another one at noon. So if you still want to sign up for those, you can go to icf-ct.org and you can still sign up. A little bit of Zoom housekeeping. You'll notice that if you scroll your cursor to the bottom of the screen, you'll see three things. You'll see the Q&A box. You'll see where you can raise your hand if you have a question that you want to ask. And then there's also a chat box. So we'd love to see things going on in the chat box. If you have a question, put that in the Q&A. It'll be easier for us to find. We're also going to have a few polls tonight. So when the poll is launched, you'll see it on your screen. Just submit your answers and then hit submit. And that way we get to see what you've chosen. And I think without further ado, I'm going to introduce our two speakers. So Suze Shaner and Linda Schaefer-Veneria are both PCC coaches. Suze is a member of our chapter here in Connecticut, and Linda is out in Carlsbad, California. And I just found out that they met in their coach certification program. So it's great the way we make connections and work together with people. Sue's motto is, wherever you go, there you are. Sue Shaner is an executive coach, speaker, and leadership and organization effectiveness consultant with over 25 years of experience. She has had her own global coaching and consulting practice for 14 years and has also held internal leadership positions at Accenture, IBM, GE, HealthNet, and more. Sue's vision is to create a world where the expression of our whole selves is valued in the workplace. As a coach, she creates a safe environment that both nurtures and challenges her clients to identify and shift the mental, emotional, and behavioral patterns that support or impede their ability to get the results they desire. So Suze has had many roles and trainings, including teaching, developing community self-help programs, art therapy, and even a Kundalini yoga and meditation teacher. So lots of variety. I love it, Suze. And then we have Linda Schaefer-Venaria. Her personal mission is to help people and organizations to be confident and decisive when facing volatility, emerging change, and uncertainty, especially when pushing their edge. For nearly 20 years, she has worked globally with diverse organizations as a consultant, coach, and speaker with her company Enterprise Coaching of Carlsbad, California. Linda's thought leadership on edge performance is inspired by her unique experience as the U.S. Navy's third woman test pilot and only the second woman operational squadron commander, as well as her experience coaching over 1,000 leaders in diverse roles and organizations. Linda's book, Perception Power, 10 Skills to Get Your Team to Buy In, Take Action, and Gain Momentum, was an Amazon #1 bestseller. So welcome, Linda and Suze. And now you get to take it over and fade into the background.
Well, thank you, Monica, and thank you to ICF International, ICF Connecticut, and the ICF Connecticut team who has made this possible for us to be giving you the presentation today. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. As Monica said, Linda and I met during our coaching certification. We were already experienced coaches about 20 years, and we snuck in right under the grandfathering clause. We're like, we're not starting over. So we were in a training targeted for experienced coaches, and it was out in California. And at that time, we decided, it was a 2-week program over 3 or 4 months. And in the last exercise of the last day, that's when we actually worked together for the first time. And we decided that we were going to figure out a way to work together. And we started touching base every day for a couple of weeks, and just this emerged out of our conversations with what we were seeing with our clients. So we created this model called Activated Now, 7 leadership factors for moving through uncertainty to achieve results with courage, grace, and strength. We actually created in 2017 before COVID-19. And we initially piloted it with leaders from Fortune 500 companies, academia, and nonprofit organizations. And since that time, we've tweaked the model and we've worked with it. And of course, we realize now is the time to be sharing it more broadly because of its extreme relevance today, given where not only where the world is, but where it needs to go. And our model is based on our collective 50 years of experience working with leaders. It integrates our cumulative observations and experience. And we also built on research across the disciplines of behavioral science, of course, being coaches, neuroscience, and rocket science. So I also teach yoga and meditation, as Monica said, and I'm a student of neuroscience and use what I call ancient tools for modern times. And Linda is a former pilot in the Navy, so we incorporated some rocket science in here, believe it or not. And it's a model that focuses initially on self-management as a leader, how you're managing yourself through these times. And then once you master the model and you get it down for yourself, you can also use it with your teams and organizations for what we call collective mastery. So we wanted to just invite you for a moment. We're just going to pause here to just put in the chat a few words about what interested you in particular in this webinar. In other words, what do you hope to get out of the next hour? So if you can just, let's just see what we have in the chat here. Don't be shy.
Introverts.
We do want to hear from you. Like you signed on for something about this seems kind of appealing. Curious what leadership factors you deem most important. Okay. Was part of the initial training and happy to see it's evolved. Yeah. So we do have a couple of participants that were part of the pilot. So thank you for coming, Eve. Hoping to gain knowledge to share with clients. Excellent. Okay. Well, what we're going to share with, thank you, and very appropriate for now to achieve results for myself and others. Absolutely. How to integrate courage and grace. Yep. How to help clients deal with uncertainty. Because the thing about being, for those of you who are coaches, we're going to come back to this throughout the presentation, is that you cannot bring folks to a place that you don't embody yourself. How to integrate courage and grace. Yep. Absolutely. Okay. Thanks. All right, so here's our goal for today. To give you a perspective on how you can more consciously show up to respond to volatility in your life and business day by day in an appropriate and optimal way, including an extreme crisis such as we're dealing with COVID-19, but obviously this could be in any kind of crisis type environment. But we're going to use COVID-19 as our case study, our example today, because it's a common point of reference that unfortunately we now all can relate to. And so at the end of our hour here, our objectives are to help you understand the 7 factors necessary to get yourself activated for what we call courageous action. And our system is based on a guidance system, which we call ANCA. It's short for Activated Now for Courageous Action. And to understand why a guidance system is important, describe what we mean by activated now, and then to help you identify how you can leverage this model in a courageous manner with leveraging your greatest strengths. And at the end of this presentation, this evening, this afternoon, or for wherever you're tuning in from, or perhaps on the recording, our hope is that you will identify one factor that you can better leverage immediately. And so what's unique about our model, if I do say so myself, is that we have an elegant way of weaving 5 simple elements, which as leaders, we need to tend to. And so we like to say it's as hard and simple as understanding the context we're living and operating in, our states of being at any given moment, how we go about generative learning, which is learning that builds on itself and is reinforcing. What are we doing? What actions are we taking that lead us to the results that we need to achieve? So it's about context, being, learning, doing, and results. And we're going to spend a bit of time setting up the context for our model because, as you learn, and many of us are experiencing today, context is everything and so important. And things that are relevant today in the context of COVID-19, maybe we didn't give much thought to as little as 2 months ago. Okay, Linda and I are going to be taking turns back and forth with the slides to give you some different perspectives.
Thanks, Suze. Context is like the water we're all swimming in. And today, in this global water world, the water we are all swimming in is unfortunately COVID-19. And it's like a tsunami effect. It's an interesting point about tsunamis that they do not rise 100 feet above the ocean like walls in the movies where people go, ah! And it's this monstrous wall coming at us. A tsunami may come in at just an inch higher and be essentially invisible to such a degree that you could be looking at a tsunami unknowingly at the same time you're admiring the ocean view. Think about that for a moment. And that said, what is most significant about a tsunami is the force that the water comes with. It comes with such a force that when it breaks, it keeps on coming and coming and coming and coming, and it destroys everything in its path and kills much of it. And you cannot just stop it, or you can't simply step out of the way. It has to be managed at your end to identify it proactively via some kind of warning system, which you can enable you to have the best outcome. And COVID-19 is very similar to a tsunami, if we think about it and pause here for a moment. It's invisible and it keeps on coming as a contagion to everyone, and it requires data and warning systems to enable the best outcomes. The COVID-19 environment we're all in, it's actually a good example of a VUCA environment, where VUCA is an acronym, and it stands for volatile, uncertain, chaotic, complex, and ambiguous. VUCA, it was a term that was coined in the 1990s, and it was created actually to enable explaining and giving clarity and substance to what the military was experiencing with the Iraq War. And VUCA has since emerged to become language, which is readily being adopted into global business for specifically bringing focus and clarity to volatilities being experienced everywhere today. And specifically with channeling ourselves in a fast-paced global world where everything is interconnected and things can change in an instant. When that happens, it produces feelings of all the things being chaotic and complex with what's constantly evolving in the emergent situations that are sometimes hour by hour and even moment by moment. And that's a tall order. The point is that as leaders, we need to be activated and ready for all situations, anytime, anywhere. And that is what we mean by real-time ready. Specifically being present to the situations and people in our environment so that we can make the most optimal decisions right now.
And when you're making optimal decisions, your executive functioning is working on all cylinders. And neuroscience has taught us that our brains are wired for safety, security, certainty, efficiency, and survival, among other things. And what happens in VUCA environments, or what we call VUCA moments, is that our survival gets threatened, whether it's real and or perceived threat. Your brain doesn't really know the difference. So this is an example on the left-hand side of a control subject of a normal brain. And on the right is a scan of someone with a panic disorder, with high anxiety. So right away, you can see there's a vast difference in those brains. And so we know that during anxiety, a lot of our brain focuses on just how to survive. And we can get tunnel vision because it's just focused on that. And we're seeing, particularly in the pandemic, that I'll say some of us have demonstrated these behaviors at various points in time. So what's critical to understand is that in this instance, our executive functioning, which we know is our ability to think clearly and to quickly analyze and make decisions, is not operating at its optimal state, as fear or anxiety may be overactivated or activated in its place. And so we need to recognize that we are all experiencing a little global trauma here, okay? There's never been anything quite like this before. Not only like this, but that we have the communication, as Linda said, to communicate around the world in a nanosecond. So we could have a whole session just on trauma, but it's suffice to say that when you're traumatized, your executive functioning is not operational or operating that well. You can't think clearly. You're in fight, flight, or freeze mode. And I'm sure you've noticed that we're all in different places with our relationship to this pandemic and how we're navigating through it. So the goal is essentially to rewire your brain so you can operate with greater clarity, confidence, and comfort, believe it or not, in an extremely uncomfortable situation where maybe you don't have all the information you need or want to make decisions, or maybe you aren't feeling as confident and comfortable as you would like as you're making those decisions. But what matters most is your perspective on the situation, what support you have, your constitutional makeup, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what we mean by this specifically, because people come to this with very different constitutional makeups. And any prior experience you've had with personal trauma that either could exacerbate how you're navigating this or perhaps help you adapt with the current global situation.
So the question then that we all need to ask ourselves with all this going on is, what helps you move along the learning and growth curve in this current learning environment? And it really is a learning environment like none we've ever seen before. And we just want to show, for illustrative purposes here, we actually found this on Facebook. And this is how one organization is answering the question of what helps you move from fear to learning to growth in this environment. And so we wanted to say thanks to the Vermont Department of Health for this. But the ultimate point here is that in order to adapt and learn quickly, it's of great value to leverage a model that can be a catalyst for making that happen.
Okay, so at this point, we want to talk about how you specifically are relating to the coronavirus environment. Okay, that's a tongue twister. We're going to use interchangeably COVID-19 and coronavirus. So we're going to do a quick poll. So what was your initial overall personal reaction when you first heard about COVID-19? Fight, flight, or freeze? Fight, were you fired up, not believing it, doing all you can to combat getting sick? Were you in flight mode, avoiding the news, immediately hunkered down at home, not wanting to talk about it or deal with it? Or maybe freeze, oh my gosh, not sure what to do, anxious and just kind of frozen. So we'll wait a couple minutes to see where everyone falls out here. Again, don't be shy. This is completely anonymous. True confessions, but nobody will know.
Suze, I think you can go to your next slide because that'll show the answers too after they submit. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, a couple more people haven't voted yet. We'll give it 5 more seconds.
And if you feel like, well, I was kind of doing a little bit of both, that's okay. Just pick one that you felt like was a little bit more representative, even if it was a fraction, because none of us are pure in this. There might be one moment where you're fighting it, one moment you're frozen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then I can just share the results, right?
There we go. Can you see the results?
Yeah, so 50% were all fired up and trying to fight it and be like, okay, I'm gonna do anything I can not to get sick. 29% in flight mode and 21 freeze. So it's interesting to see how the breakup is. And I'm sure we're probably representative of the general population to some extent in terms of those percentages would be my guess.
Mm.
Okay. Oops. Okay, so we've got another question for you. Oh.
Yep.
I guess
Leave it there.
Leave it there? Okay. So what were some of the emotions you experienced in the first month? So after the initial, then you're hunkered down for like 4 to 6 weeks. After there was a stay-at-home order in your town or city, you were sequestered at home or for several weeks. Were you minimizing it? Oh, it's okay. It'll be okay. Were you in fear, panic mode, calm? Maybe you were stockpiling toilet paper like many of us, or maybe you sought ways to help your neighbor or frontline workers. Again, check all that apply. Maybe you cleaned out your garage or did another, it's a great way to get some of those home projects done, or maybe you saw it as an opportunity for downtime to reconnect with others. If you say other, then just share with us in the chat what your other is.
It looks like people are really thinking about it. They're taking some. All right, the answers are starting to roll in. And don't forget, you can scroll. If you can't see all 9 options, you can scroll down a little bit.
Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me about that. So we got a bunch of others. Definitely put in the chat when you put others. It'd be interesting for us to know what else were the ways in which you spent your time or expressed your emotions.
Okay.
So interesting, we've got like, okay, so not a lot of panic, a little bit of fear, not a lot of fear, some minimizing, a bunch of calm here, And then it looks like, you know, okay, one person owned up to stockpiling toilet paper. And an opportunity for some downtime. And lots of self-reflection. Helped my daughter reschedule her wedding. Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of things had to get rescheduled, right? Creative projects, more time connecting to new people, designing programs to help my colleagues stay connected and learn how to facilitate in the virtual space. Yeah, a lot of folks who weren't connected virtually had to suddenly scramble, right? So you know, for those folks who said, I'm gonna learn Zoom one day, well, guess what? You were kind of forced into it. Okay, we've got one more poll question for you here. So, okay, we want the next one. So what are some of the behaviors you observed in leaders, either in your organization, in your community, or in the world in reaction to COVID-19? Were they minimizing it? It'll be okay. In panic mode, but you saw by their actions, were they calm? Did they give reassurance? Were they solution seeking? Did they support their employees and frontline workers? Did they lay off employees? Did they keep employees safe at home? Did they see it as an opportunity to redirect, reconceive their business or community? And again, you can check all that apply. We're doing our own sort of anthropological little study here, right? And again, when you hit other, just help us in the chat understand what else you saw. I didn't experience the downtime that, oh, somebody says, Vicky says, I didn't experience the downtime that many report, but instead had to redo work to deliver virtually. Yeah, I could not find toilet paper for weeks. That's a rough one, literally, probably. So I was feeling fearful, but also overwhelmed. Yeah, understandably so, especially when we don't have some of what we perceive to be necessities. Okay, so let's see. Minimizing, a few people saw leaders minimizing it. Oh, we've got 5 there. 2 said calm, 4 gave reassurance, 9 solution seeking, 8 supporting employees, laid off employees, kept employees safe at home, number there. Saw it as an opportunity to redirect, reconceive business or community. So that's interesting.
Okay, I think everybody should be able to see the results.
Yeah, Abby. Yeah, Abby. If you should be able to see the results. If you can't, let us know. And again, if you want everyone to see your responses, you can hit not only to all panelists, but you can hit to all panelists and everyone. Okay, great. You can see it now. Okay, good. All right, so this is just like our own little experiment here, just amongst us, right, in terms of what we're observing.
Okay, let me get that out of the way.
So thinking about all that we just saw from everybody's responses, the key is to be primed and ready for anything, anytime, anywhere. And what we mean by that is looking at our experience with COVID-19, as we were just taking a pause to reflect upon. We had lots of opportunity to practice doing what we need to do, when we need to do it, and the way we need to do it in these kinds of situations. And there's also some things that we chose to not do in a very deliberate way, even special things like the wedding that being postponed. And the kicker, the real kicker here is being primed and ready to do all that you need to do, want to do, have to do naturally and by instinct. And so here's our model, and this is where our model actually fits in. Today, many of us are asking ourselves, with all of this going on, now what? How do we move forward from this pandemic where life will never be quite the same? And this is what happens when you find yourself in any VUCA environment. You find yourself in a place of asking, how do I move forward? That becomes the question that is most on your mind. And so we have identified in our ANCA guidance system 7 leadership factors that enable you to close the gap from now what to what do I do now to get to where I want and need to go. A state where you are activated to give your best response to what is happening now, and even more specifically, where you're able to give your best response to the state that we call activated for now. And so to bring this to life during this hour that we have together here, we're going to be following Taylor Smith as he navigates his work and life amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Taylor is actually a composite of clients that we've worked with and is our case study avatar. And Taylor Smith, he's 40-year-old vice president of a meat manufacturing plant. He resides in New Jersey, and he lives in New Jersey in a suburb outside of New York City. Taylor is married to Chris, also 40. Chris is a nurse at a local hospital, currently working 12-hour days, 5 days a week. And the experience they have when the virus suddenly hits is Taylor's restricted to how, when he goes to the plant. The children can't go to school. Chris's job requires exposure to the virus. Everyone's required to stay home and minimize trips to the grocery store. We all know about that. Fun for everybody. And so Taylor and his family are immediately put into a crisis mode with how does Taylor manage work responsibilities remotely, given the nature of business he is in? How does Taylor ensure the facility is safe and sterile? Added to the crisis is how to manage homeschooling amidst both he and Chris working. And very significant is how to keep the family safe with Chris being on the front lines at a hospital. So Taylor learned about the ANCA guidance system just a few weeks ago. It seemed like a nice to have at the time, but he quickly realized that it was a necessity to have it right now. And so he scavenged the house for his notes in order to help himself get focused with the best navigating the crisis situation. And we're going to follow Taylor as he leverages the ANCA guidance system in navigating the crisis. We're first going to introduce the model, and then we're going to come back to how Taylor is leveraging each of the factors one by one. So here's the visual of our model. It's a system that will walk you through step by step. And the yellow oval that you see on the left, that highlights the fact that our model is based on Merlin Whitrock's generative learning model. And Whitrock is an American educational psychologist who worked in the late 20th century with this model. And we're going to take a moment here to talk specifically about the learning model because it's significant to what we're going to be doing. So here's the model. In Whitrock, what he did is he observed the steps that take place when your learning is generative. And by generative, what that means is your learning built on itself by being self-reinforcing with iterative feedback. And so starting at the top here, you experience something, you reflect on that experience, you attribute meaning to that experience, and then you take action based upon the meaning that you gave the experience. And then the next experience you reflect on, and so forth, so that you keep moving with your learning circularly around the loop. And the learning is ongoing and additive. A key point here, and a very significant point, is that this can happen in a nanosecond. And it's often unconscious in terms of the data or information that we select and what meaning we attribute to it. And this matters. Also significant is that our mental models and belief systems influence what we pay attention to and what we do not pay attention to, and then what we do about what we notice. So they're important. And so we're going to come back to our approach with leveraging this model as we progress with presenting the ANCA guidance system.
Okay, these three yellow concentric circles make up our model, the ANCA guidance system. You could consider these circles as layers, dimensions, aspects, or rungs, if you will. For our purposes, we're going to use the term circles or rungs. So the first circle is the core of the model. This dimension focuses on your state of being, specifically how you tap into your states of being and recognize what state of being you are in at any given point in time. You could be in the mode of surviving, sustaining, or thriving. The next rung of the circles is a learning dimension and outlines how we leverage Whitrock's four-step generative learning model, which houses the rest of the 7 factors. So we've got here experience reality. This step specifically refers to the reality of a VUCA environment, and in our case study today, COVID-19, disciplined reflection. We emphasize reflecting in a consistently structured and disciplined way, which is essentially what we do in coaching, to propel our thinking and reflecting about what we're doing, not doing, and can, should, maybe, and must be doing to be ready specifically. We use the mantra for anything, anytime, anywhere. Then going around the circle, shape meaning. This step refers again to consciously and deliberately choosing the meaning that is most relevant and helpful in navigating the VUCA environment. And then the last section is courageous action. This step refers to how we are poised and positioned to activate ourselves for courageous action. And courage comes from the Latin, literally means to go with a full heart. It means to overcome or perhaps manage any fear or anxiety that might come up, which is natural in a VUCA environment. That it would in uncertain situations, because as we said earlier, our brains are wired for uncertainty. And when we don't have that, our brains are just going to scan the horizon and look for, where we can protect ourselves, essentially. So our approach is to generate understanding, command, and activation by design. So we like to use the word activation versus just action, to enable being ready for anything, anytime, anywhere. And to do that, we have collapsed learning and doing together to enable real-time learning and response. It's really learning in an agile way, which leads us to the next rung, which is doing. And this is where the factors sit within the 4 steps of the generative learning model. So let's start at the top again, experience reality. The first factor is understand the VUCA environment, like understand the nature of what it is you're really dealing with and your relationship to that environment. So it also incorporates wisdom insights, which we'll talk about more in a little bit, but it's about integrating learning as you go in an agile fashion, as I said. And then disciplined reflection, we have explore your constitutional makeup and take inventory. And we're going to explain in detail what each of these are. Shape meaning, we have engage in orienteering. And again, you're incorporating your wisdom insights. You're regrouping as you go. Courageous action, we have recalibrate for readiness and activate your guidance system. And then you notice tapping into states of being, which is factor number 2, but it's not in that 4-step. It actually touches on all of them, because wherever you are, Monica said, one of my favorite phrases is wherever you go, there you are, right? So wherever you are, you're aware at any given point in time with how you are being. What state are you emanating from, or making decisions from, or guiding your feelings, thoughts, or actions from at any given point in time? So all of the factors collectively create an understanding of how you operate in relationship to your environment. And our guidance system enables you to take a stronger command of a situation within the VUCA environment. So the 3 rungs of being, learning, and doing together create your guidance system, which is how you need to guide yourself in navigating the VUCA environment. So to summarize it, you understand your environment and your relationship to it, how you're being affected by it, how you may need to change in relationship to your environment to get the results you need and seek. And now we're going to walk you through each of the leadership factors at a high level, because we have a whole in-depth program on this, but we at least want to give you a high-level definition. And so as we go through each of the factors, we're going to share how Taylor Smith leverages the factors to build his decisiveness and capacity to take action with greater clarity, confidence, and comfort regarding all that's going on with his work and family. As you can see, like many of us, it's very complex. And so I just want to check in for a minute. Monica, do we have any questions so far?
Nothing's come up yet. I think they're intently listening.
Okay, good. Hopefully hanging on the edge of your seat. Here we go. So Linda's going to start with the first factor.
Thanks, Suze. Okay, there we go. So again, very significantly, we want to note here again that the first factor does not start at the core. Our first factor is understanding the environment, which establishes the context. And as Suze mentioned earlier, context is everything, and everything in the context of channeling ourselves to be decisive. That means that you need to build a very conscious and deep relationship with the environment so that you can better manage yourself to optimally navigate through it, as it's very hard, if not impossible, to be decisive when you don't know what you're being decisive about or toward. And so let's take Taylor's take on this factor. He guides his family to take a pause, to really observe and take in the environment that they are suddenly thrust into with COVID-19, with the intention of starting to navigate it better. And so what they realize, they quickly realize that they need to figure out how they're going to manage their work schedules so one of them can also homeschool the children. They need to make sure that they're stocked with food and paper products to minimize trips to the store over a couple-week period and give them space to do other things. And Taylor needs to determine how work will be managed from home and when he may need to go to the plant and what are the precautions he must take when he does so. And they need to also implement very significantly extreme health and safety measures, with Chris being a nurse on the front lines. So the focus is for Taylor's environment to be one of needing to be safe and effective for both his work and his family.
So factor 2 is the core of the model, tapping into your states of being. And we hold or embody 3 states of being at any given point in time. You might be in the being state or mode of surviving, sustaining, and or thriving. And sometimes we flip back and forth with how we feel and what we experience. And these days it could be hour to hour, moment to moment. So the invitation is to know and be aware of which state of being you need to pay attention to at any given moment, when to increase activation in a state or decrease activation. Opportunities to leverage or optimize states to increase your options for being in control in perhaps an extremely chaotic or constantly evolving and emerging environment. So let's get Taylor's take on factor 2. Taylor now has to manage his own state of being and be aware of those of his work team, his partner Chris, and their children. You can't lead people to a state you don't embody yourself. And rather than focus on just surviving through this time, he wants to be focused on the spectrum, on what he can do to sustain and thrive for himself, his family, and his business. And that may sound kind of, wow, really? But this is the invitation and the challenge. And he realizes he needs to tend to what we'll say, like the vibe that he and Chris are giving off for their children, so they feel safe. The adults are the ones that need to work out the homeschooling situation and make it fun for the kids, so they want to do the work that they must do. And Taylor needs to enable himself to get set up virtually for work and create clear and frequent communications with his work teams, and externally to be proactive with his customers and supplier relationships. He needs to check in with his employees and see how they're navigating their own well-being. So there's a lot of complexity here, as many of us have experienced.
Factor 3 is taking inventory, and we do not mean your typical type of taking inventory of widgets in your supply cabinet or toilet paper that you happen to have in your bathroom. By inventory, we mean a disciplined reflection and comprehensive act to ensure that you have clarity. And this is where you step back and assess what you have at your disposal and become clear on what needs to be at your disposal. The intent is to build a very clear understanding of what you have that can meet the demands of all of what you need, what you want to address the situation as it unfolds. And examples could be ensuring clarity of goals and objectives that you have or have to have, resources you have or have to have, the channels of communication you typically use, and parallel options to augment those channels so that they can be adopted or released. And you may want to inventory the mindsets that you could adopt that would enable you to shift from a state of surviving to a state of sustaining or thriving. And additionally then, what approaches that you could use to enable yourself, your team, or others to engage with those mindsets. And so let's get Taylor's take on factor 3. Taylor normally does most of his communicating at work face-to-face or on the fly, where he reaches out to people in his organization or his customer organizations. And the way of communicating he has been totally disrupted. It just is not the way that he can communicate anymore, specifically right now. And so he sees this as an important opportunity to step back and inventory all the opportunities he has to communicate, to solve problems, to get immediate response, to get ideas on how to communicate with known technologies. And by gaining then this comprehensive picture of what he has to work with regarding communication, it's really a relief to Taylor. And you can imagine why that might be the case. And like much of the world, he's even had to learn Zoom, which is something he never even knew existed before. And so he appreciates from his taking inventory that he's really able to get himself in a proactive mind rather than a reactive mind, where he also sees things that he can do that are even better than ways he had been communicating before the pandemic happened. And that was quite the surprise to him.
Okay, factor 4, we're continuing with discipline and reflection, exploring your constitutional makeup. It's about understanding what is hardwired and what is malleable and changeable within and about you. So the whole goal is to have greater understanding to enhance capacity for action, or as our term is, activation. And we look at 5 domains in your constitutional makeup: your mental domain, how you think about things, your paradigms, perspectives, or mindsets; your emotional domain, your feelings and emotions that surface and how you manage and navigate those; your physical domain, your health and physical stamina; your social domain, your sense of belonging and connectedness to others, which some are really feeling that these days; your spiritual domain, and we're intentional about that word. We refer to spiritual, we mean gives you purpose or meaning and is often an outcome of alignment of mental, emotional, physical, and social domains. And it results in what we call a vital spirit. So let's get Taylor's take on factor 4. For the sake of this presentation, we're going to just focus on Taylor's constitutional makeup. He has asthma, so he definitely wants to make sure he stays healthy during this pandemic with a pre-existing condition. He tends to be a type A personality, so he wants to balance working on plans and also being present to his family without exploding at times, because things are emerging and he can be a little finely tuned and high strung, and he's not really sure, things keep popping up. And to take care of those things, he needs to make sure he does some form of exercise every day, because he tends to neglect this domain even in the best of times. And he also realizes to reach out to friends and family, just so he feels connected. He realizes he needs to take a pause first thing in the morning so that he can foresee his greatest challenge for the day and consider his options with a calm and clear mind. One of the things he started to do is to spend just 5 minutes each morning deep breathing in silence to reset his nervous system. The other thing about Taylor is he likes his freedom. He likes to be able to come and go as he pleases. He likes to go to the plant if he needs to, but now there are clearly other protocols and considerations for his staff and for his family that he has to factor in.
Next factor, factor 5, is orienteering. And this concept actually comes from skills that you need to survive in the wilderness, where sometimes you may have a map and a compass, and sometimes you don't even have that. And where the objective is to simply find your way out of the wilderness, if that's truly simple. You may not even know where you are or where you're going necessarily, but you will work to find your ways of figuring that out. And for example, you may need to create a map or a game plan as you go. You may not be starting with anything or even have a concept of it initially. And as awkward as that may be, it may be exactly what you have to do and realize that you need to commit to. It may be a way of simply just orienting yourself to what the next step may need to be. And a key thing about orienteering is that you may not be able to put the whole map together, period. But you're moving forward in a way that's directional and puts you in a position to refine the map and learn as you go. And so orienteering is about establishing, in the nutshell, the most right direction possible, even if it's in the moment. And so we're going to take a pause here to get Taylor's take on factor 5. Taylor started to feel like going to work was like venturing out into the wilderness. And he actually felt stupid for thinking that way, because he knew that was exactly the way he felt, but he didn't want to feel that way. And what he was used to with his team, he was feeling like they had a roadmap before all this COVID came to visit on how they were proceeding. And he liked that a lot. He actually thought that that's how he needed to operate. And his roadmap served as his compass at that point, and also positioned him with comfort. The roadmap of the compass included, guidelines with metrics, plans, and approaches to work, which felt very directional. And now they're figuring things out as they go. And it was extremely uncomfortable for Taylor and for his people to be in that position of having to do that. They're all starting to worry about how this could impact everyone's jobs and the future of the business, at the same time that they're trying to figure out how to do the work that's before them. And so Taylor realizes that he needs to embrace orienteering and to look for new ways to establish direction, so the map of how to do business can actually unfold for them. And in order to establish direction, Taylor realizes then that he needs to get the questions right that's going to enable him and others to work on defining the actual next steps and serve as their compass until a new map can actually emerge or things can become clearer. And so the questions he focuses on are ones like, what are the 2 best things that we can do to ensure that we get the job done while we're minimizing health risks? And another question, how do I check in more frequently, and in what ways do I need to check in with my staff to make sure everyone is okay? Another one, what is the approach that I most need to add to my leadership right now to help everyone work together and commit to finding the next steps to be successful? And one more is, what do I need to do to make sure my children and spouse have what they need? And so factor 6 is recalibrating your readiness. Where calibrated for readiness means to be prepared and willing to do what you need to do, must do, want to do. And we say recalibrating, but in actuality, it could be calibrated or recalibrated. And that would depend on whether it's your first time applying this factor or an ongoing tweaking of a calibration that you already have in motion. Essentially, calibrating is about taking a moment to be aware of what your mindset is, and then consider whether this is the mindset that you need in that moment for you to be successful, to do what you need to do, and if and how you need to respond. And it's about calibrating yourself to think decisively and act accordingly from that thought. And so, for example, you might be in a mind to jump in and act when it could be better serving to you to take a short strategic pause so that you have time to think about the problem, and also to think about how you're thinking about the problem. And so realize that this can be done in seconds. It does not have to be a major effort, but it does have to be done to be calibrated. And calibration requires you to identify and set the conditions which will enable you to have confidence activating. It's as simple as this. Do you have the confidence to activate? Yes or no? And are the conditions there to help you do so? And it simply means that you're ready and willing to go forward and to act on what you know or have decided. So let's take a moment to get Taylor's take on factor 6. Taylor is feeling better about how to work the many aspects of his COVID-19 experience with his family and work. That said, he has a queasy feeling when he thought about how ready he is to take the next action. And he knows he's not likely to do what must be done unless he thinks things through more. Basic thinking time is not enough for him, at least he thinks it's not, and he realizes that he knows that he needs something more and starts pondering that. And so Taylor looks at the model and realizes that he needs to recalibrate his readiness as he was not feeling prepared and willing to do what he needs to do and must do. And he thinks about his mindset. His mindset is he wants all the details to be fully lined up and ready to go. And he realizes that this would never be the case in the current environment with COVID-19 and what's unfolding. So he realizes his mindset needs to be calibrated to one of having sufficient details to take a step to try something and learn something that could be done next. And he started to ask himself, well, how can I comfortably go about having only sufficient details to make a decision for myself and my team? He realized he needed to have opportunities to test his opinions in order to build the confidence factor with that. And so he knows that without this, he's not going to be able to be activated. And so he actually goes back to factor 3 of taking inventory after that realization, and then inventories opportunities that he could avail himself of to test his opinions and build his confidence factor. He realizes he can test his decisions with his coach at a team meeting or with a peer vice president at another organization, or actually test his opinions by doing some Google research. And so factor 7, next slide, Sue. Factor 7 is to activate your guidance system. Simply put, a guidance system guides your movement, and it guides your thinking, your feeling, and your actions in real time. A guidance system is comprised of the operational components, which here are the factors and also the generative learning model. And so to activate means to make something operative and to take action. This includes your making the decision to act, and it also includes to follow the decision with action. And oddly, we tend to skip the seemingly simple step of making the decision and get stuck. And when this is happening, our response is, what do I do now? Do I know what I need to do now? And to make the decision to choose to be activated is the big is of what you need to do now. You are deciding you're prepared and willing to act. Once that first activation takes place, then it's a process of being proactive, producing the guidance approach, and then keeping the conditions for activation sustained, updated, and evolving so that you can thrive with a cycle of continually reactivating and recalibrating based upon what emerges and changes and evolves event by event. And this is what we call moving VUCA moment by VUCA moment. And so let's take a moment to take a look at Taylor's take on factor 7. With everything Taylor has done so far, including meeting his conditions to feel ready, prepared, and ready to go, he says, well, it's odd. I find myself asking, what do I do now? And he reflects back to the ANCA guidance system, trying to figure out why this is happening. And he realized that he was calibrated for readiness, but not activated to take action. And so he realizes that he has to make a decision to go. And he asks himself, am I ready to make that decision? And he responds to himself, yes, I am ready. I'm ready right now. And he says to himself, okay, then, I'm going to do it. And ceremoniously, you know, sometimes we need to have that physical celebration of the moment. He puts his hand up in the air and makes a motion to push a button, symbolizing to himself that he's ready to go and he's committed. Hokey, perhaps, but it's about doing what you need to do to commit yourself to take actions and, you know, ensure that you follow through. And so he then said to himself that he just did not realize how critical it was to calibrate himself to pause to make decisions rather than simply assume that he would make them when the time is right. And so you need to go back and recalibrate that neck too.
So we've taken you through one cycle around the model using Taylor as an example. And the opportunity and invitation here is to keep going around the wheel through the factors until you're able to leverage it in real time and take time to work the factors when you have a complex situation that's facing you. And when you build your mastery with the factors and capacity to enable your thinking and action them in real time, you can gain wisdom, which is really learning from your experience, and become more and more activated now, but activated for now, because things could change in a moment's notice. Activated for now really means you've enhanced your capacity for greater clarity, confidence, and comfort with the uncomfortable that you're facing, and maybe with being in uncharted territory, by essentially embodying readiness that positions you to be resilient and agile in real time. So Taylor's take on wisdom insights is he's applying the factors continually to assess what's happening at his plant, with his partner, with his kids. He iteratively adjusts his mindsets, thoughts, and actions while managing his emotions so he's not too anxious, but also alert to details that could possibly put him or his staff or family in danger. And neuroscience research states that what we need for optimal functioning or being in a creative, productive space is actually to be in the state of slightly happy, not in fear mode, but not in joy, elation mode either, but slightly happy. So think about how you could calibrate yourself to be slightly happy. And many times it's actually a conscious choice. So for Taylor, he needs to continue to eat and sleep and exercise in ways that enable him to function well. Those are the basics. He also needs to delegate where he can and to structure his day differently. There's that agileness that's required now in this current state as he moves in and out of work tasks and getting the children set up with homeschooling. And he uses his knowledge of the model now to update his thinking and action, and he appreciates feeling much more ready and confident with whatever comes his way. So just to recap what we've covered today, we talked about rewiring the brain for greater clarity, confidence, and comfort versus fear and anxiety. We talked about 5 simple elements. We used the metaphor of a tapestry where you're working with context, being, learning, doing, and results. And with everything you're learning and doing as you work through the factors, you're enabled to build a tapestry to enable your richest thinking and rightest action in real time. And you do this by your ongoing identifying, weaving, integrating, deciding, and activating on the wisdom that emerges from your working with the factors. So we were going to do a poll. I recognize we are at time here, but really what we wanted to do, we don't necessarily have to do the poll. We just wanted to check in and say, now that you know the model, can you identify which factor maybe that you might need to more consistently leverage for yourself at this point in time? And so I'm going to throw that out as a reflection question. Yeah. And then,
launch it or no?
Yeah. No, I think we'll throw it as a reflection question. And because I know we're at time and I want to be able to get some questions, and of that factor that you would want to leverage more now, how will you take ownership of your number one prioritized factor for now? So what I'm going to ask folks to do is just to put that in the chat in terms of what factor, based upon what you heard, you think you would more likely want to leverage now, and how you would go about doing that.
Just go back one slide so they have to refer to, Suze.
Yep.
Can you go back one slide so they can see the factors?
I did do that. That's interesting. It's not showing up.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that not showing up? So,
no,
let me recap. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
So, So is it understanding the environment that you're operating in and your relationship to it and its impact on you? Is it tapping into your states of being? For example, are you operating more in survival mode and you want or need to operate more maybe in sustain mode? Is it taking inventory, like really looking at all the resources you have at disposal or those resources you need to acquire? Is it exploring your constitutional makeup in terms of your mental, emotional, physical, social, or spiritual domains that you're managing? Is it engaging in orienteering and getting yourself constantly oriented or reoriented throughout the day? Is it calibrating or recalibrating yourself to be ready so you're poised, willing, and ready to take on what's coming your way? So you're agile and more clear, confident, and comfortable to take action or navigate through your challenges? Is it to cultivate what wisdom you are learning from your experience and to act on that more consistent, what you know to be true from your experience? So hopefully that helps just jog some thoughts here.
We're seeing a few recalibrate. We see tap into states of being.
Tap into states of being. Yeah.
Yeah.
For readiness.
Great.
Sometimes you can know what you need to do, but you're not doing it because you just don't feel like you can. He may be a leader. Oh, here's a question from Jackie. He may be a leader, but up until now, all I heard was agile development is just learn quickly from small errors. Why not discussing? Why are we not discussing that agile development is learning quickly from small errors? So it can be. We were giving just an example for illustrative purposes. Linda, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think part of it is when you're in uncertainty, you may not even know whether you're making it or not. There's enough information. And so the focus has to be on clearly understanding whether you're in the zone where you can actually move in an action and learn, even determine whether something is an error or not. So agile might fit and it might not fit. And so if we're looking for agile and errors, we can actually miss the opportunity or the picture or what we need to focus on. So it's kind of an unusual environment.
Yeah, and her comment was actually before you got to the last couple of factors. So I think it was her motion that she's building.
Sorry, Jackie. Sorry, Jackie.
Yeah.
I was scrolling up. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to, sorry, Jackie, about that. So let's see. So I know we're at, and some of you have to jump, but basically we gave a brief overview of the model. And if anyone's interested in more information on the model or how to use it, a couple of things. We're finishing a white paper on the model. So we hope to get that out in the next couple of weeks. And we have a more in-depth program that we could deliver, obviously these days virtually, either for leaders, teams, or organizational development. And we also offer coaching against the model. So I want to just share our contact information. If anyone's interested in the white paper, shoot me a note. If you're interested in, you have a question on the model or coaching or anything with one of us, you have both of our contact information. But for those who are interested and want to stay on, we're happy to entertain questions right now, but we know we're at time. So are there any questions?
Yeah, and before we answer any questions, I just want to let people know that you will get a survey tomorrow, and it will also have, the email will have a link to the recording. So you'll get both of those in the same email, and if you would just please finish the post-event survey, we would love that. That'd be great. Yeah, and you can rewatch the video for more as a refresher, as Eve says.
Well, you know, because there's a lot here, and really it's really a whole system. If we look at it, there's the dynamic ebb and flow of you and your environment, internal, external, in a way. That's another way to think about it. We have some folks, I'm just going to, let's see, great refresher, lots to think about. Wonderful mode for coaching leaders, move through the tsunami and come out with the right response. Recalibrate for readiness. I would take inventory of resources so I knew how to get more expertise on the issues. Yeah. Okay. Any question? I don't see any other questions in the chat, but are there any questions in the Q&A, Monica?
Yeah, but I have a question I thought I would ask, and I know one of your C words was clarity. I know that for me, when I get clarity, and a lot of your first factors really help you get clarity, and then you get to create that plan. And then once you have the plan, then there's that, making that decision to act. So I'm trying to think exactly where is that whole developing your plan of action for the whole, having heard all of the factors. Where would you be in that plan of action?
Yeah, so what it is so we actually have like a whole module on each factor. And so you're building your guidance system as you go. So we would go more in depth on what are the components that make up this factor. And then you would work through that factor. And then you're building you're building like a tapestry of insight and action as you go. And then you have kind of as you move through the wheel, if you will, then you have your plan, and then you're going to have to tweak it and adjust it. Linda, was there something that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, in the context, reading and everything, it's a compound experience where it really builds into your capacity to make better and better decisions. And when you start to do this as a matter of routine discipline, the better you become at being able to be wise in an instant, because your mind will start to naturally think and absorb information that way and fill in the blanks. And so it's not just about doing this as an exercise, but really learning to think this way so that you truly are ready and activated for what we call right now.
Right, and it's kind of like those levels of consciousness. You don't know what you don't know, unconscious incompetence, and then eventually you get your way to conscious or unconscious competence. You ingrain these 7 factors into your way of thinking.
Yeah, it's to add to what you're talking about here, Monica. We often assume that we're thinking about things or acting on things. We're really not, even when we normally would. And so when you take this consciousness to it, it really helps you your best, which can't be more important than when things are difficult.
Right. And I'm aware, I just want to check in, Monica. Do you feel like we answered your questions? I'm just aware that we're way over time, and I won't be cognizant of that.
Well, we still have 11 people hanging on, so there must be some reason why they're still here. So really, if anybody else has a question, I'd like to come to the microphone.
Does anybody else have a question?
All right.
Well, they can always reach out to us. We're happy to answer questions.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having us, and thank you, Monica, and thank you to ICF International, ICF Connecticut. We're very appreciative to be able to share this.
Well, it was great, and there's so much depth to that model. So I will be definitely reviewing, and I look forward to when the white paper comes out. Please do let us know, and we'll put it on our social media channels and things too. So
okay, great.
As Eve says, be well, everyone, and thank you all for being here tonight. And please, if you have nothing to do tomorrow, or if you'd like to sign up for our last 2 webinars, 8 a.m. we have Dina Markine doing Oasis in the Overwhelm. And then at lunchtime, we have Judy Garfinkel, our president-elect, and Isabella Isola doing a webinar on leveraging your strengths to get through career transition. So we've had a lot of topics that have to do with the uncertainty and change, all the change in the world. So it was a very timely summit. I do say so myself. It's really great. But thank you all. Thank you for staying, and we'll be in touch. Watch for that survey. Thanks again, Linda and Suze.